Hey guys, welcome back. Right now I have Jeremy Whitley with me. He is the writer of Princeless. It's like I said, as I walked up to you, my approach was all three of my daughters love this book. Tell us a little bit about Princeless and kind of what it's about.
Yeah, so Princeless is about a princess named Adrian who's locked away in a tower by her evil parents to wait for a handsome prince to come rescue her so that she can be married off. But instead, she decides to bust out of the tower herself, team up with her dragon to go rescue her sisters who are also locked up, and sort of become a knight herself.
So when you're looking at the approach to this book, you're trying to write a strong female character. You're a dude. How do you approach those themes and still make them feel authentic?
I think a lot of it boils down to listening to people, I said this on a panel I was on yesterday, but listening to the people that you want to represent. Because if you're willing to put in the time and talk to people and bounce things off people, because in comics a lot of people are more than happy to read your stuff and let you know what they think. And if you're willing to put the same kind of time into that sort of research, into getting voices right that you would into researching a historical fiction thing you're doing, you don't start a World War II drama without doing research. And I think if you take that kind of time and listen to what people are saying, it gets significantly easier. And I think, one of the biggest things is not getting bent out of shape when people tell you you're doing something wrong, and actually listening to what they're saying and sort of taking a step back and going, okay, well, I can do this better. Because, if you really want to represent somebody, you'll take the time to do it right. And if you can't take that time, you're just trying to make a quick buck off somebody.
So looking at the reception of Princeless, it's been fairly well received, really well reviewed. Was it a satisfying feeling knowing that you had created this very original, original concept? I mean, the princess that kind of busts out of those confines maybe is a tad Disney sometimes, but the way you've presented it has been very different from other things that I've read. How does it feel to know that it was received so well?
It feels great. It's one of those things that I'm never satisfied with stuff, but seeing the way it has reached, particularly the audience that it's meant to reach, is great to me. Doing conventions like this and having kids run up to the table and be like, "Oh my God, this is my favorite comic!" Or yesterday, I had a girl who was 14, was carrying a big stack of comics, and she was like, "Oh man, Princeless is the first comic I ever read. This got me into comics." And I was like, that's the good stuff right there, man. That's it. And yeah, I'm always trying to do more stuff and work harder, but it does feels good to know that it's getting the people out there.
So when my dad first introduced me to this comic, no idea what it was going to be. I was like, okay, I'll read this. I have fallen in love with this comic. One of my main questions to you is, how do you come up with the characters? Because there is so many characters.
There are a ton of characters, and it started off with Adrian is based sort of roughly on a weird combination of my wife, my sister-in-law, and eventually my daughter, who was too young for it to be based on her when this started, but is sort of seeping into the character as I go, and she gets older. And then some of the characters I've lucked into, Bedelia, I was like, I need somebody to be at the desk to the armor shop in the blacksmith. And then I was like, well, what if she is the one making the armor? I think I have a tendency to whenever I see a cliche or a thing that's really easy to do or write in the story, I tend to kind of turn left and, just let's do something different. This story's been told. There's, 800 Tolkien hacks out there. I don't need to be another bad J.R.R. Tolkien. I want to do something different. And I think in a lot of cases, that's kind of what drives how I tell the story. And in the case of Raven, that was interesting because working on the first 2 volumes of Princeless, the one thing that a lot of fans brought to me is the question of Adrian's sexuality and representation in that respect, which is important to them as well. It was honestly something I hadn't thought a lot about at that point, and I thought was would kind of muddle the message of Princeless to some extent, because it's it's about how she doesn't need a guy to save her. She can do her own thing. She can save herself. And if you add into that oh, she doesn't want guys to save her because she's not interested in guys, like, because she's interested in girls. And it's like, I feel like that kind of, it does one important thing, but also undercuts another important thing. I wanted Raven to be a character that could actually reflect that. And the more I wrote her, the more I kind of fell in love with that character, and the more she grew into, going from being the free comic book day story character to being like having an arc in the story to like having her own comic series now.
So when you're looking at like the process of comics creation, and you're getting those like kind of aha moments of, oh, I really enjoy this character, like, do you have like this internal struggle? Well, I want to write both of them, or do you just say, you know what, let's do this, let's like go full out?
Yeah, I mean, it's I do have that struggle of like, I keep introducing characters in the story that I really like, and like I don't necessarily have a place for them to go like after they leave the story. I think one big example is in Volume 4 I introduced this goblin character of Dolores Grunkmore, who's like a goblin adventurer. I really didn't have anything for her to do after that volume, and I was like, man, I like that character. Someday I got to figure out what to do with that. But that's not the story I'm telling right now. We'll come back around to Dolores.
It's that like, let's put a pin in it kind of idea.
So it's either at the end of Volume 1 or Volume 2. I'm not all the way caught up, but the end of one of them, there's a little girl playing in a meadow, and then there's a Minotaur that shows up. When are you going to get back into that? Because that was very interesting.
The answer is Volume 9. That is the next time that's going to show up, because that is Adrian's younger sister, her only younger sister, who is going to be the last, who she's trying to save in Volume 1, but she turns out not to be in the castle. It's a very Mario thing. But like, yeah, she won't figure out where she is and get back around to being able to save her until like almost the end of like this overarching story of like saving her sisters.
So you also have worked on like My Little Pony, for IDW and that kind of franchise, franchise. How is working like within the confines of a franchise like My Little Pony different from working on creator-owned things like Princeless?
In some ways it's easier, and in some ways it's harder. Like working on My Little Pony, or like, in the last couple of years I've done a lot of stuff at Marvel. It's fun to get to play in somebody's sandbox and not to necessarily have to build everything from the ground up as you go. In the first issue of the Unstoppable Wasp that I did, I have like Ms. Marvel and Mockingbird in that, and like those are just things that are there for me to play with that like people already know about. They already exist. I don't have to like build the entire character of who Kamala Khan is. Like, that's been done for me, and that's a really nice thing of working with that, is you can jump in and just go straight to what the story is that you want to tell. Whereas at the same time with Princeless, I don't really have an editor who can tell me no about things. Like,
I hate being told no.
Yeah, I have an editor that helps with the series, but she's more of like our employee than like my boss, which is the case with Marvel or IDW. So like, if an editor gives me a note and I go, no, I don't like that, I don't have to do it. And I can kind of steer it the way I want to steer it. But yeah, it's nice to be able to switch off. I feel like it almost uses different parts of the brain, like, because that toolkit is already there. All that stuff is there. There's a whole wikia I can go to about Marvel if I really like need to know something about a character that I don't already know. Whereas if that's the case in Princeless, like, I have to make it up. I have to figure that out. Like, if I really need to know what somebody's favorite color is, I have to figure out what it is and why.
So at the beginning, it seemed like you're having all the princesses as her sisters. With Raven, I'm not positive if she is or isn't her sister. Are you going to keep it like that? Are you going to have both her sister and non-her sister? Or in your later ones, is it going to magically become her sister?
Sorry, that's Deadpool walking by with "Baby Don't Hurt Me."
So,
all people that dress as Deadpool are just as annoying as Deadpool.
They're the worst. So, Raven is kind of a diversion in that, she's not one of Adrian's sisters. She is actually just somebody that Adrian happens to stumble upon between going from one sister to the next. She has this like overwhelming sense of like what's right. So she sees, another princess locked in a tower, and she's like, I got to jump on that, help her out. It kind of backfires on her in the case of Raven, and that Raven tries to steal her dragon and run off with it. But yeah, I think that's something that I think is going to be unique overall. And the first, I think probably 10 volumes is what we're going to end with for this sort of main story of her saving her sisters. But I think like overall, that's going to be an overarching theme in the story of like trying to save other people and not necessarily paying attention to what those other people need so much as like what she thinks they need. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Can you tell our fans how they can find you on the internet and look up Princeless and your other diverse work?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at it's jrome58, so JROME 58, where I'm always talking about comics from Princeless stuff to Unstoppable Wasp and all the other Marvel stuff. I'm on Tumblr at princelesscomic.com or princelesscomic.tumblr.com, which is mostly about Princeless, but also I post other stuff there. And then I have a terrible website that I'm working on updating that's just jeremywhittley.com.
Awesome. Jeremy, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. You're making a great comic book that a lot of kids really love, so thank you.
Well, thank you. It's